When a human doctor refuses treatment to save supplies for patients, warrior cubs sacrifice their sacred life essence to heal her, sparking a galaxy-wide revolution where an entire species transforms from warriors to healers. Medical Chief Vorgon stared at his bio-alert screen in complete disbelief. 9 Thraxian warrior cubs had breached their quarantine ward. These weren't pets or younglings playing. They were apex predators whose biogel was worth more than entire planetary systems. And right now, all 9 were surrounding Dr. Sarah Chen's desk, secreting this priceless substance onto her infected wounds while she slept. The security footage told an impossible story. For 3 days, Sarah had been refusing treatment. Her temperature read 104 degrees Fahrenheit. The infection from treating wounded miners was spreading through her system. She kept saying she was fine, that the medical supplies were needed for critical patients. She had no idea the cubs had been watching her deteriorate hour by hour. "Commander, they're giving her their metamorphosis gel. They only get 1 dose in their entire life." Vorgon's voice cracked with disbelief. The biogel was sacred to Thraxians. They produced it once during their transformation to adulthood. Without it, they couldn't mature properly. Each drop was worth more than the entire station's yearly budget. And these cubs were pouring it onto a human who kept insisting she didn't need help. She's been refusing treatment for 72 hours. Temperature at 104 and rising. The medical readings were critical. Sarah stirred slightly at her desk, her fevered mind still focused on patient charts. Even unconscious, her hands moved through the motions of checking vitals, administering medication. She'd been working for 200 hours straight, stopping only when her body literally shut down. That gel is worth more than this entire station. And they're just giving it away? The cubs worked with surprising precision. The eldest positioned itself near Sarah's infected shoulder wound. 2 others focused on the spreading infection in her bloodstream. Each cub was carefully applying their life-essential gel exactly where it was needed most. She keeps saying she's fine, while treating critical patients. She's not fine. Just one thing before we begin. YouTube tells me 99.3% of you watching aren't subscribed. Subscribing is free. It really supports the channel and you'll get more amazing HFY sci-fi stories delivered straight to you. Don't miss out. Security teams assembled for extraction. The cubs were valuable, their biogel even more so. Protocol demanded immediate containment. But as the team approached, something extraordinary occurred. The cubs began producing more gel. Not just using their single lifetime supply, but actually generating additional biogel, something their species shouldn't be able to do for another century. They're aging themselves. Each drop of gel cost them years. The bioscanners showed impossible readings. The cubs formed a medical circle around Sarah, their small bodies trembling from the strain. They were literally sacrificing decades of their lifespan, forcing their bodies to produce gel that shouldn't exist. Their metabolisms were burning through years of growth in minutes. Sarah mumbled in her fever sleep. "Need to check on patient 12 needs medication." Even dying, she was trying to work. The cubs responded by intensifying their efforts, harmonizing their life force frequencies to accelerate gel production. The sonic separation that security tried only caused the cubs to synchronize deeper, their bodies weakening visibly as they poured more healing essence onto Sarah's wounds. "Sir, they're literally giving their lives 1 year at a time." The cubs' biogel was working. Sarah's infection markers began dropping. Her fever started to break. But she remained unaware, her mind locked in a loop of patient care, unable to recognize her own critical condition. Dr. Cleth arrived with xenobiology equipment, and what she discovered defied 3 million years of evolution. The cubs had spontaneously developed secondary gel-producing organs. These biological structures shouldn't exist in their species. They'd evolved them in real time, triggered by witnessing Sarah's selfless refusal to use medical supplies others might need. They're rewriting 3 million years of evolution in real time. The cubs were converting their own muscle mass into biogel. They were redistributing their life force, creating more healing substance than their entire species had produced in recorded history. Each cub had generated more gel in 3 hours than adult Thoraxians produced in a lifetime. Multiple intervention attempts failed catastrophically. When the medical team tried sedation drugs, the cubs produced stimulant gel to keep Sarah conscious for her work. When they attempted to remove Sarah, the cubs created a biofield that maintained her vital signs remotely. When synthetic gel was offered as replacement, the cubs somehow taught the synthesizers to produce better medicine. Must check, vitals, patient needs, transfusion. Sarah continued treating invisible patients even while unconscious. The cubs began incorporating human DNA sequences into their gel. They were creating a hybrid healing compound specifically designed for her physiology. Their bodies were learning her genetic code and adapting their sacred essence to match perfectly. The gel now contains human DNA. They're making it specifically for her. Dr. Cleth watched her instruments in awe. Each cub has produced more gel than our entire species makes in a decade. Suddenly, alarms shrieked through the medical bay. 9 adult Thoraxians had arrived, their biosignatures radiating fury. Pack Elder Zareth led them, his massive form barely fitting through the doorway. His cubs were wasting the sacred essence on an alien, a lesser species who shouldn't even be able to process their biogel. The adults stopped short when they saw the scene. Their cubs, visibly aged and weakened, continuing to produce gel. Sarah, unconscious at her desk, her hands still moving through medical procedures. The medical logs floating above her workstation showing the truth. 200 hours of continuous patient treatment. No breaks. No food. Minimal water. Every time someone tried to treat her, she refused, saying others needed it more. The logs showed her treating over 500 patients during a mining disaster, never stopping even as her own infection spread. The cubs projected Sarah's history through bioluminescent displays. Every patient she'd saved. Every life she'd preserved by refusing to rest. Children she'd healed. Families kept whole. All because she couldn't stop working, couldn't put herself first even when dying. Healer Mother gives all life to others, we give some life to her. The eldest cub communicated through light patterns. Pack Elder Zareth examined the medical data. His anger transformed into something else. Confusion. Perhaps even respect. The countdown timer on Sarah's vitals showed 15 minutes until organ failure without continued treatment. The cub's gel reserves were depleting rapidly. The eldest cub looked directly at his father. Is sacred gel more valuable than sacred service? The question hung in the air like a challenge to everything Thoraxian culture believed. Their gel was sacred because it represented life transformation. But here was a human who transformed lives every day, refusing even basic care to save others. Sarah's fever broke momentarily. Her eyes fluttered open, unfocused. I'm fine really? The patient in bed 7 needs. She tried to stand to return to work, even as her organs began shutting down. The adult Thoraxians witnessed something they'd never seen. A being physically incapable of self-preservation, not from weakness but from an overwhelming drive to heal others. 200 hours? She hasn't stopped for 200 hours. Zaretha's voice carried disbelief. She's physically incapable of putting herself first. It's not stubbornness, it's compulsion. Dr. Cleth explained. As Sarah's vitals crashed, her heart rate dropping dangerously, the adult Thoraxians did something unprecedented in their species' history. They began producing their own emergency gel reserves. Adults could generate small amounts in extreme circumstances, but only for their own cubs. Never for an alien. Yet here they were, mighty warriors weakening themselves to save a human doctor who wouldn't save herself. The medical bay filled with the shimmer of biogel as adults and cubs worked together, a sight that hadn't occurred since their species' mythological age when they were healers instead of warriors. Sarah became conscious enough to understand what was happening. Through her fever-hazed vision she saw them. Cubs and adults, surrounding her, glowing with the effort of producing their sacred life essence. For her. Tears streamed down her face. Save it for someone who matters. She tried to push them away. The cubs responded by showing her holographic records. Every patient she'd saved appeared in floating light. A child with a rare disease she'd spent 30 hours straight researching to cure. An elderly maintenance worker she'd personally carried to safety during a hull breach. A young mother she'd revived after everyone else had given up. You matter. See. All these lives say so. The youngest cub managed broken standard. Sarah's tears intensified. The truth she'd hidden even from herself spilled out. I couldn't save them all. So now I save everyone else instead of myself. 3 years ago, a transport disaster. She'd been the only doctor for 300 casualties. She'd saved 287. The 13 she'd lost haunted her. Their faces visited her dreams. Their names were carved into her guilt. She punished herself by never stopping, never resting, as if saving everyone else could somehow balance those 13 lost souls. Your guilt made you a healer. Let our healing take your guilt. Pack Elder Zareth spoke with unexpected gentleness. The cubs' response broke interspecies barriers. They began crying. Thoraxians didn't have tear ducts, but they developed them in that moment. Their tears mixed with their biogel, creating an even more potent healing compound. Sarah's infection didn't just retreat, it vanished entirely. Healer Mother teaches us, sometimes healing means accepting help. The eldest cub's broken standard carried profound wisdom. Dr. Cleth announced her discovery to the gathering crowd. Sarah's refusal of treatment had triggered an evolutionary callback in the cubs. Millions of years ago, before Thoraxians became warriors, they were healers. The cubs had witnessed such selfless sacrifice that their genetics remembered their origins and chose to return to them. From warriors to healers, because one human couldn't stop caring. The adult Thoraxians made a formal declaration. Sarah was adopted into their pack. Not as an honorary member, but as a full Thoraxian, recognized as the catalyst for their species' return to its healing origins. The ceremony was swift but profound. Each adult contributed a drop of their gel to create a permanent healing reservoir within her body. Within hours, the phenomenon spread across the galaxy. Reports flooded in from every sector. Thoraxian cubs everywhere were producing biogel for injured beings. Not just their own species but anyone who needed healing. A Kellex child with a broken limb. A Vorthan elder with chronic pain. Even synthetic beings with damaged circuits. The Galactic Medical Council convened an emergency session. Representatives from every major civilization gathered to witness something that challenged medical doctrine. Warrior cubs were transforming into healers, triggered by one human's inability to stop helping others. Sarah stood before the assembly, finally recovered but already trying to return to work. She still wore her stained medical coat, still carried her emergency kit. I never asked for help. I just couldn't stop helping others. The cubs demonstrated their evolution. They produced specialized gel variants for different species. They'd learned xenomedicine through observing Sarah, understanding that healing required more than just medicine. It required caring about the patient more than yourself. Strength means healing what's broken, not breaking what's whole. The cubs taught through their actions. The council's vote was unanimous. The Chin Protocol was established, mandating that healers must be healed first. No medical professional could refuse treatment when injured. Caregivers would receive mandatory care, preventing the burnout and loss that plagued medical systems across the galaxy. The Chin Protocol, healers must be healed first. The declaration would save thousands of medical professionals. Sarah was offered positions everywhere. Chief Medical Officer of the Fleet. Director of Galactic Health Services. Personal physician to planetary leaders. She turned them all down. That's where help is needed most, in the field with the forgotten. The Thoraxians announced a complete restructuring of their society. Warrior academies that had trained fighters for millennia were converting to healing centers. Cubs would learn medicine alongside combat, understanding that the greatest battle was against suffering itself. The greatest battle is against suffering itself. Pack Elder Zaretha's words would be carved into every Thoraxian medical center. Statistics began pouring in. Biogel production had increased 10,000%. But more importantly, it was being shared. The sacred essence that had been hoarded for millions of years was now freely given to any who needed healing. Medical scarcity, the plague of developing worlds, began to disappear. 3 months passed. The medical bay had transformed into something unprecedented. The mutual aid ward, where Thoraxian cubs worked alongside Sarah, learning that medicine wasn't just about treatment but about caring for the caregivers. The original 9 cubs, having aged themselves by decades, now served as the galaxy's youngest medical instructors. They taught others how to recognize when healers needed healing. The signs Sarah had hidden. The exhaustion she'd ignored. The pain she'd endured. No one heals alone. The cubs taught us that. Sarah continued working her brutal hours, but with a difference. The cubs enforced breaks. When she tried to skip rest, they would literally carry her to the break room. Their gel ensured she recovered quickly, but more importantly, their presence reminded her that accepting help wasn't weakness. The transformation extended throughout the galaxy. Medical facilities adopted the cubs' principle. No healer worked alone. No caregiver went uncared for. The idea that medical professionals should sacrifice themselves was replaced with the understanding that healthy healers saved more lives. Sometimes the most important medicine is someone noticing you need help. Multiple species reported that shared medical resources had eliminated scarcity. When beings learned that giving care multiplied rather than diminished resources, hoarding ended. Medical supplies flowed to where they were needed most, not where they were guarded best. The cubs developed a biological early warning system. They could detect burnout in medical staff before it became critical. Their evolved senses picked up the chemical signatures of exhaustion, stress, and depression. They intervened before healers broke. Giving care multiplies resources. Hoarding divides them. The breakthrough that changed everything came when the cubs successfully taught AI systems to recognize caregiver exhaustion. Artificial intelligences across the galaxy learned to monitor their medical staff, ensuring no one worked themselves to death. Thousands of medical professionals were saved from breakdown. We age ourselves gladly. Each year given is a life saved. Sarah's influence showed in small ways throughout the galaxy. Cubs now carried extra supplies for exhausted doctors. They learned to recognize the fake, "I'm fine" that healers used. They understood that sometimes the most important medicine was someone bringing you food and making you eat it. 1 year after refusing treatment, Sarah stood before the entire Thoraxian species for a ceremony she never expected. The event was broadcast across the galaxy. In the original medical bay where everything had started, thousands of Thoraxians gathered. Pack Elder Zareth presented her with the eternal gel. This wasn't just healing substance. It was a regenerative supply that would restore the years the cubs had sacrificed for her. Each drop represented time freely given, now freely returned. Sarah broke down crying. For the first time in her life, she accepted care without guilt. The weight of those 13 lost souls didn't disappear, but it transformed. She understood that their sacrifice hadn't been in vain if it drove her to save thousands. You taught us that sacrifice isn't loss, it's love made visible. Hundreds of cubs performed the healing dance, their movements showing how her selflessness had taught them to be selfless. The dance told the story of transformation. Warriors becoming healers. Strength becoming service. Pride becoming compassion. Hoarding healing is the only true illness. Elder Zaretha's words would become a medical oath. Sarah tried to return immediately to work, but found her shift covered. The cubs had learned her techniques, her procedures, her gentle way with frightened patience. For the first time in years, she had nothing urgent to do. The sensation was foreign, almost uncomfortable. She found one patient to treat, a young cub who'd injured himself making extra gel. As she tended to his minor wound with gentle hands, the galaxy watched the perfect circle of care. The healer healing the healer who'd healed the healer. Finally, Healer Mother rests. We stand watch. The ceremony concluded with something beautiful. Sarah, finally allowing exhaustion to claim her, fell asleep in the medical bay. The cubs surrounded her, standing guard. Not against threats, but against her own drive to work. They would ensure she rested, recovered, recharged. The greatest medicine is knowing someone would sacrifice for you. As Sarah slept peacefully for the first time in years, the transformation she'd sparked continued. Cubs across the galaxy produced biogel not from duty but from love. Medical professionals learned to accept help. Healers discovered that being healed wasn't weakness but wisdom. The story spread across species and systems. A human doctor who couldn't stop helping others. Warrior cubs who gave their life essence to save her. A galaxy that learned that the strongest beings were those who could admit they needed help. Years later, when medical historians studied the revolution, they would point to this moment. Not the technology or the protocols, but the simple act of cubs recognizing that someone who gave everything deserved to receive something. That healers needed healing. That sacrifice should be shared, not shouldered alone. Sarah Chin would continue her work for decades, saving lives across the galaxy. But she would never work alone again. Always there would be cubs nearby, watching for signs of exhaustion, ready with biogel and gentle insistence that she rest. They'd learned from her that healing was the highest calling. She'd learned from them that accepting healing was just as important. The medical bay's log recorded it simply: Dr. Chin treated. Full recovery achieved. No complications. But the galaxy's history would remember it as the day that warriors became healers, that medicine became mutual aid, and that one stubborn doctor's refusal to accept help transformed healthcare forever. Because sometimes, the most powerful revolution begins with someone learning to accept the help they've always given others. As the lights dimmed in the medical bay, as Sarah slept surrounded by guardian cubs, as biogel flowed freely across the galaxy to any who needed it, one truth echoed through the cosmos. The best healers are those who know how to be healed. The strongest beings are those who can accept help. And sometimes, the most profound transformation comes from cubs teaching a doctor that she matters too.